Welcome to the S.J. Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hi, welcome to the S.J. Child Show. Today, I am really looking forward to this conversation with Kristof, right? And I should have been like, hey, am I pronouncing everything correctly? But hopefully that's all good. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for being here today.
Shakespeare, thank you. Miss Jennifer, really kind of you. I treasure your trust.
I'm looking forward to our conversation and to getting to know you more. Learning, about the kind of, what was I just going to say? My mind just blanks out right at the beginning, to find out what you look for in life, what you love to do, what kind of resonates with you and things. And so, yeah, I'm excited to start this conversation this morning. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what brought you here.
Shakespeare. I'm originally from Texas, Houston area, yeah. And I joined the Navy right out of high school. I grew up in a home that was, it wasn't a very great space for kids. My parents dealt with addiction and rather, my father was really violent. And after the Navy, I discovered it while I was in the Navy. I actually discovered I had Tourette's, but I wouldn't have that diagnosis until I was 27. I didn't because they weren't certain what it was for a long time. And when I was 27, I became a journalist. By audition, I taught myself to write, and I won an award for feature writing and photography. Um, and I tried to go to university, but I didn't go well. Just because that's not. I discovered it wasn't for me. I did win some awards though for poetry and short fiction when I was there, two different schools. And then Shakespeare. That's a tig actually. I say Shakespeare. And between the ages of 27 and 32, after I got my diagnosis of Tourette's, I didn't write, and then I started to write again. When I was 32, after they told me, I was told by a work BC, British Columbia, because I live in Vancouver, in Vancouver. They told me that I wouldn't, they couldn't find me work that could accommodate my condition, and so they told me to start writing again, since I loved that, which is true. But I had a crisis of confidence for a very long time, and then I did. So I wrote my book. And now it's considered actually a work of literature. I learned recently that that it's studied in classes that like studying Charles Dickens actually, and so it's very flattering. It is actually the dream. My dream that was to find its way into classrooms since I became a writer.
I love that.
Mm.
Writing is such a interpersonal journey that you can have so many different types of growth, like personal growth, you can have emotional growth, intellectual growth, so many different types. And what you said, you've always loved writing. Kind of, when did you know? I think I was in like second or third grade when I was just like, I am obsessed with words and dictionaries and looking up words and kind of, I think when I really understood how much I loved writing and reading. And I mean, I did it prior to that, but the love of it. When do you think that happened?
I was 13. We were tasked when I was in class. It was first period. And we were told to write a letter to soldiers in Iraq, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so I did that. And I remember while I was writing it, that a very profound kind of music, because of like the nature of the letter. I wanted to do it well, I'm not sure why. It meant a great deal to me though to do it well. And so after I wrote the letter and I turned it in, I remember feeling the music begin. And later that day, it was in the middle of the day. I was swarmed by a bunch of kids who said that the teacher had been reading it to every class, and that she wanted to publish it in the newspaper. And that's what she told me whenever I met her late, a few minutes later. And so that was the seed that brung unto me its purpose. Yeah. So Shakespeare for me, it's a Hemingway something Hemingway said about whenever he sees a word, it's like he's seeing it for the first time. And I understand what that means because a lot of the nature of words is how it relates to not only ourselves but society at large. And for me, every time I see a word, I see every iteration of it that I've known it to be, and how and and like its most meaningful sense to everyone. And so it's just it's enormous. I love it a great deal because it has it's everything. It's us. Every word is us over and over again.
Yeah. I can feel the passion in your words and just from your presence. Like really, I can see like how passionate and how like deeply you are connected to what you're doing. And I think that that's kind of for me, this is me just saying my own opinion, but I think that that's really a sign of a highly intellectual and a highly sensitive and highly emotional type of individual and spirit in this world. And I think it's really special. So I think what you're doing is amazing. And the fact that you're so open and vulnerable to share your experience and help others understand. Um, let's kind of go back to earlier in your school years. How did you feel like you fit in with everyone else? Was that something you struggled with, or was that an easy thing for you?
Shakespeare. I didn't. I didn't fit in at all. Most of my life, actually. That's because when you're bullied at home and as violently as I was abused, both verbally, physically, emotionally, uh, you you learn that standing up for yourself in any sense is quite perilous. And so whenever that happened in school, I did not like I wasn't able to defend my own dignity and self-worth
Mhm.
uh, amongst others. And so I was an easy target in many senses. And uh, the thing is that I learned recently that whenever you're experiencing something like that, it's much more difficult for you to mature in the same senses that every other kid is because they're able to um, because when you're abused, the trouble is that uh, especially for me, when it happens so often, you discover that you have to try a new personality every day.
Mm,
And so you can't be firm in who you are,
mm,
and you cannot develop that any sense of self. And so it's quite destructive to your ability to manage relationships with others because you really have no planet of personality to orbit.
yeah.
And yeah, and so I didn't. It was for me. It was I was in a constant state of observation. I had to simply observe, and whenever you are, again, whenever it's if you live with someone who is really violent they're rather capricious, uh, it's you you realize that you have to learn the nuances of expression, and so for me, it was all about learning how people felt at every moment and studying every expression that they made and the way that they said everything because it could be if I didn't know how my father was feeling and I looked at him the wrong way, I would get beaten for that, and so
Used
it was
against
really
you.
dangerous for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
I think
Shakespeare.
it's so interesting you said that because I can, I mean, my dad was a general in the Air Force, so
Oh
he
boy.
wasn't per se physically violent.
Mhm.
However, communication was what you probably could expect. And I was only child, a girl, I think that in that
Wow.
sense, emotionally, I can completely understand living in fight or flight, constant fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. It wasn't until maybe 2 years ago that I received my autism diagnosis and ADHD that I somehow was able to like take that in and maybe source it out over, my life and kind of
Hmm.
feel what that meant. And then in the coming months, my husband would say, you seem really different. Like you're not living in fight or flight. Like it's helped you. You've let go. Something about this has helped you let go of that living in constant fight or flight mode. I thought that was so interesting. Do you feel like getting your official diagnosis and putting an understanding like to your heart and in your own mind helped you move past that, or is that something you are still today kind of in that mode?
Hmm. Well, ideally, I would like to, agree, concur, right? That I'm the same in that sense. But I think any kind of relief, in reconciliation, that I experienced was really very limited. Probably, if I had to quantify it, I would say like 20% has diminished. However, the most profound thing for me was uh, making friends, true friends. And I have four very lovely friends. And they know who they are. Rosa, Mariah. Now Dan, we call him Dan Tanyan. He's the fourth musketeer.
Mhm.
And then we have a new friend, Aubrey, who's very lovely. But I met all these people through my work. I published my book, and they have done an enormous amount of help in sort of curing a great deal of insecurity and uncertainty about my ability to make friends. Shakespeare. They've actually supported me a great deal with my work, not just like emotionally, but actually financially, because like they set up and like in terms of tasks, they set up my entire website. They set up they do like they help me with all the marketing. They do like, in fact, oh, Shakespeare, 2 days ago was my 1 year book anniversary. The day I
Congratulations.
published my book a year ago. Um, and so they've done so much to rehabilitate, I think. It's funny, not rehabilitate, because rehabilitate implies that I had something before to, well, ability. I don't know, really. I don't know the
Right?
word to redevelop. But because it wasn't there, it was never there really. But they've made me feel like who I am is worthy of friendship, and that's been uh, the most compelling evidence of worth that I've been able to discover in this whole writing journey. And getting letters every day from different people who've read my work to say like the effect it's had. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I couldn't agree more that when I hear that people have listened to the podcast, right? I'm like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, like somebody actually listened. And then I know that, there's 20,000 people that have listened, but still it still makes me so happy to hear one person just say it and just to have that. And I am certainly glad to have met you, and I see how much value and strength and character you have. And so I'm certainly glad that we got to do this today.
Mhm.
What was that when you decided, okay, I'm going to write the book? What was that like for you? Was it like really emotional to go through the process, or what did that look like?
Uh, so it was a surrender, truly. It began that way. I They told me, of course, I said earlier, like the the work counselor for the government said that they couldn't find me work, and right. And so within 10 minutes of hanging up with her, right, her name was Erin. I had to start writing. I started writing the book, and uh, I realized that I was either going to write the book, I was either going to write something and live a life of consequence, or I was going to die. I didn't really have a choice. I felt like because it was so important to me. Like Steinbeck said, he said his whole mission as a writer is to help people understand one another. It was imperative that I try to achieve the same in my heart anyway. Knew that I had done something uh, to to assist in that uh, in that mission. And so uh, I started I started writing. I've never had a problem generating stories, just because I've lived a really wild life. I'm one dispatcher, and I'm won awards as a journalist, of course, and I was in the Navy, and I've lived all over. Um, I mean, just a lot of stuff. And so it's I always try to start simply, and I started simply, and I had a character in mind that I wrote right away, that I started with right away, and who everyone that's their favorite. His name is Moo,
Mhm.
because for a number of reasons. And but because my book doesn't really have a main character, but that's their favorite. Generally, that's everybody's favorite because he's so adorable. But yeah, and so I started with a simple idea, and then uh, I developed from there. I knew that on the first day that I needed to do something that I was proud of, um, and and I did. Within the story, I wrote a little poem that's really funny. It's really quite cute. And then it's actually the only thing in the book that never changed. Everything else in the book was completely rewritten in terms of like the way it was written, and not the substance of it. Anyway, so for me, writing it was about exploring what I truly knew, and what I thought was worth imparting. Yeah, Shakespeare. Shakespeare. Also
Beautiful.
about tackling people's. There's so many things that people are uncertain of, and that people contend with. As a white guy, there's a lot of stuff that struggle that I can't really understand the measure of, for a lot of people. And so it was important to me to feel like I could make an adventure for everyone, rather than try to like deeply explore like any kind of specific um, failure in society, right? It was just that's just not me. I can't do that. And so like and similar to Tolkien, that's what I tried to do, was to it was to expand on the virtue that no matter how small, but in my book there's no racism or sexism. And so everyone is a part of it, and everyone can do great things, and everyone can fight, and everyone can challenge and win, and it's yeah. So yeah, it was about lifting people up.
What was your experience in the Navy like? I know we're kind of going,
Okay,
jumping around in time frames and stuff, but
it's okay.
I'm just really curious and what that was like for you.
Well, yeah, Shakespeare. My time in the military informs a lot, about my understanding of what eventually the personality that you develop while you're in the service. Like where you're actually doing something. that is a member to like the government's greater missions. It's a larger being a part of something that's much larger than yourself. It's abstract and isn't very clear. It's only vaguely defined, and it's really instilled like throughout your life, the principle of service and that sort of thing. And so, but there's also a kind of um, cynicism. Like after a while, there's a kind of not a cynicism. It's just a tired. It's an exhaust. It's a curious kind of exhaustion, but a happy one
Mm.
because you know you're doing something worthwhile. You feel like, but it is tiring. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. So being in the military, like, and also you develop a sense of camaraderie that you can't replicate in any other environment. Because I remember Shakespeare. I remember when I was in during corps school, which is corpsman. I was a corpsman, so I was a medic, a Navy medic. Generally corpsmen actually serve with Marines. They don't because Marines don't have their own medics. And actually, it's funny. Marines are actually a department of the Navy. Most people don't know that. And Another really fun fact: corpsman is actually the very first job that was ever in the U.S. military ever. And the Navy was the first branch of the U.S. military. And it's actually a really cute allusion to that fact. The job Everyone has a job, and their job is defined like you'll know it's by a number. It'll say I'm a 1047, and that means you're an airplane mechanic.
Yeah.
But for a corpsman, it's 0000. It's all zeros.
That's
Because it's
cool.
really so. Anyway, I don't know. It's really dumb. But
No, I
for
love
me, it's
that. My
cute.
grandfather was in the Navy, so
Oh, cool.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, Shakespeare. And the notion that you could be deployed and that something could happen to you, uh, and then that's really something that shapes a lot about the way you think about the next few years you have, and when you're witness to things like I witnessed, and you when you lose people, that's another thing that's really quite wounding to your heart. But like I had a roommate I remember in the barracks in corps school that had to call his dad, and he told his dad that he was going to be shipped overseas after he did his time on the West Coast. Um, his father, my father's not obviously. I didn't have that experience of any kind of sentimental anything with mine. But to hear his dad cry and knowing that his son was going to be in a place where only 5 years before it's it truly destroyed the mental health of a lot of young people who served in the early part of the invasion of Iraq, and it's in Afghanistan. It really changes you because uh, I mean, I remember in course school, she said there was someone that an instructor came up to us and said, "You're going to get deployed. That just accept that now. It's going to happen because we're corpsmen. That's what happens. That's where you go." And there's a lot of expectations for corpsmen, and because you have to take care of your Marines and that sort of thing. And
Wow.
it's it's yeah, it truly is like a call of duty,
That's
in the real
amazing.
sense, and not just a video game.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
My dad was deployed he was an F4 fighter pilot. And
Oh
so
wow.
he was deployed in Iraq and Kuwait early in the 90s, obviously.
Mm, yeah.
But I was, a teenager, 13 to 17 at the time or whatever. And it was really, yeah, that was a really interesting time period. I oftentimes lived with house sitters that would just come and stay with me. And this kind of that notion that you said that there's not this close tie with anyone to have that with. So Yeah, there was some few years that were very interesting in that sense that I was just kind of raising myself at this house, you know. Um, there are some scary times, and I mean, I was never traveling, so I was always just there, you know, by myself. But to get the letters or to, and then back then there was no cell phone, so it was
Yeah.
like letters that I would just wait for
Hmm.
months to get, you know, and oh my gosh, yeah, it was insane. But I have some really great pictures from his time there and some, you know, interesting uh education from that now. But moving on from that, that's really hard. So when you came home, were y- you able to like understand that you might or you did go overseas, did you
No,
say?
no, I
Oh,
didn't
you
actually,
didn't
because
go.
I
Okay.
did Shakespeare because I developed Tourette's. I was stationed at Naval Air Station, Jacksonville, Florida, and I worked at a hospital there, which is really there's a lot of really amusing stories from that time, but
I
um, yeah,
bet.
also tragic ones. But yeah, it's an interesting deployment in that sense. That
Yeah.
when you're sent to like call it a deployment. I mean assignment. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my mom's a nurse. So
Mm,
just being a medic, I mean, I can't imagine, like, I could never, that was never the life for me for sure. So, and
mhm,
that's really amazing that it just sounds like you just have like this real, genuine authenticity to help humanity and to help people. Um,
mm,
and so that's really a great trait that you gained maybe through the experience that you went through and feeling like I'm going to give the help I never got or
yeah.
um I think that that's really profound and a beautiful way to offer life like your own skills.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a repudiation, right?
Yeah.
It's of what you had come to know, cruelty and uh, for me, I was fascinated with the notion of being a knight. I have no interest in it now. I mean, not in reality, I don't really,
Mhm.
of course, but like, but the virtues that are that you expand on, and that you try to elaborate on, uh, and in like defending those who cannot defend themselves, and standing up for something like and sacrifice. And trying to I don't and the maintenance of that is so I think is so beautiful. Yeah, and worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's on your bucket list or plans to do next?
Hmm. What Shakespeare? I have so many things. But the prevailing work that takes up a lot of my space right now. My first book, of course. My first novels, volumes one and two of the
Yeah,
second.
hold it up so I can see it.
Uh,
Okay. Oh, it looks
uh,
amazing. I love
yeah.
it.
It's an epic fantasy, and which is quite interesting. That there are if there are any other works of literature in that genre, I'm not aware of them. But there are works that are celebrated, Game of Thrones, and Lord of the Rings. But if you read Lord of the Rings, there's actually no prose in it, which is like it's a very necessary part of naming something literature. Because it is very celebrated and loved and beloved and charming and brilliant. Anyway, but to describe our philosophies and ethics explicitly is yeah is a component of literature that you can't like anyway. Yeah, it's a quality that you have to have. And uh, for me, I've been wanting to do. I actually started volume three of that series, and I've already finished the first draft. and I'm nearly finished actually with
Oh,
the
congratulations.
first. I'm gonna be done with the first rewrite relatively soon. And every report I've gotten has been very encouraging from people that have read both volumes 1 and 2 and now have read volume 3. And after this, I'm doing a sci-fi series, and I'm dating. It's hard. That's another thing that is really difficult, because my life is so wild and outrageous in many senses, especially now. Like there's a lot of momentum developing in my career, and like weird. I have weird instances, like that I don't know. There's just a lot of a lot of propitious things happen every day, and so there's so many encouraging things that are happening, and uh, like right now I'm in a hotel because someone that really loves my work um, knew that I was struggling because there was doing construction at my house
Mm.
where I was living I was renting a room in a family home with a family that lives there. And it's an extraordinary amount of noise and distraction, and so they paid for me to stay for a month at a hotel on Vancouver
Wow.
Island. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, I love that for you
yeah,
and that
yeah.
support.
Yeah, and then Shakespeare, and then I have actually I enjoyed it so much, and I've been so productive that they did it for another 4 months. I'm staying somewhere else for another 4 months after this, which is very lovely, and I'm really quite grateful. I'm incredibly grateful to have that, and they paid for my website
Wow.
and my like all my stuff. There's so many things that they paid for.
I'm
So
so happy for you. And like,
yeah,
you're so deserving of it. You're just very like humble,
Shakespeare.
wonderful person. I'm excited that I met you, Kristof. Added to the list of Sarah friends that you've
Ah,
now had added a fifth friend. I know you can't see
yay!
in
They call themselves
person.
the Sun Sisters.
Yeah,
There's like
I love that.
the women that have read my work. They call themselves the Sun Sisters. It's like,
I love
that's what they say.
that. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna my husband loves that genre of reading, and I'm excited. I'm gonna get him that book to read. So I don't know if you have a signed copy, but we might have to get a hold of each other after this so we can
Yeah,
figure that out.
I could do that. Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely.
This has been such a great conversation to get to know you and find out about your work. And thank you for sharing about your struggles but mostly the wonderful things that are happening for you. Where can everyone go to find your books and your website, all the good stuff?
Well, it's you just kristofmorrow.com. I actually now I have that, and there's all my links to
Okay.
everything, the Discord server, Spotify, which has all the other, like I've done like over 40 something interviews in the last couple months,
Great.
say like 3 months or something. And let's see, there's I have a TikTok which has about 6,000 followers, and Instagram and Facebook, all that stuff. It has everything there. Oh, and the Amazon link to my book, and Kobo. Kobo is
I've heard of
another.
that before. Yeah.
Yeah. It's another marketplace for books, and if people don't want to get it off Amazon, they can get it there. Shakespeare. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
It's been so nice to spend this time with you. Are you Mountain Time as well in Vancouver Island, or are you Eastern Time?
I'm all West Coast.
Okay, you're
Yeah.
Pacific Time then maybe.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, you're on that side, huh? Oh, that's lovely. I lived in Oregon for a long time, so that's as close as I got up that way, but
It's really lovely in Oregon,
it is.
though. There's moss everywhere.
Oh, I
It's so
love
beautiful.
that. Such a beautiful time of year. Love it when spring's about to start and everything. So, well, it has just been so nice. I hope that we can stay in touch and I can check in on you and see how you're doing and then maybe have you back after volume 3 to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much again for being here today, and we'll definitely be in touch.